Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to Midnight Affairs Tales. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world you are watching from right now. Let us know in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story, Chapter 1. The Last Perfect Night. The soft crackle of firewood filled the room as Clayton Pierce poured another glass of wine, the glow of the fireplace dancing across Rowan Hart's face. Her laughter, usually bright and unfiltered, seemed a little too careful tonight, like she was trying too hard. The engagement party had been flawless. Family and friends had toasted them, snapped photos, cried happy tears. Everything was perfect, almost. Clayton's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. He ignored it. But then Rowan's phone, sitting just inches away, vibrated too. Not once, but 3 times in quick succession. Same name flashing each time. Travis Cole. Clayton felt a chill creep up his spine. Travis. That was the ex-boyfriend Rowan rarely spoke about, the one she described as young mistakes and bad timing. Why was he calling her the night before their wedding week began? Rowan noticed him looking. She snatched her phone up too fast, holding it tight against her chest. He is sick, she said awkwardly, her voice catching. Really sick. Cancer. Clayton blinked. The word felt dropped into the room like a brick. He wanted to say goodbye, I think. He does not have long, she whispered, her eyes glassy. The fire popped, sending a crack through the thick tension between them. Clayton wanted to believe her. Needed to. But somewhere deep inside, something twisted. The timing, the secrecy, it stank of more than sympathy. He looked at Rowan, the woman he was about to marry, and for the first time, he questioned if he even knew her at all. Was she telling the truth? Or was this the beginning of something much darker? Wait, if this story gave you chills or made you think twice about trust, don't just scroll away. Hit that like button to support the channel, and subscribe if you never want to miss another jaw-dropping tale. We drop new stories every week that'll leave you speechless. Join the family, because here, every story hits different now. Let's dive back into the story. 3 days later, Clayton stood alone outside what was supposed to be their wedding venue. The grand hall, once filled with dreams and deposits, now sat silent, its empty ballroom mocking him. Guests had been told there was a family emergency. Vendors canceled. The cake decorator sent a sympathetic refund note. Rowan had left him with a voice message. Not even a real conversation. Clay, I cannot go through with it right now. Travis needs me. I hope you understand someday. Understand what? That she had chosen her ex-boyfriend over him? That she had thrown away years together for a man who had not even been in her life until last month? Clayton crushed the envelope in his fist, the one with their non-refundable venue deposit refund check. It was not just betrayal. It was humiliation, played out publicly. Worse, Rowan's parents had rallied behind her without even hearing Clayton's side. They pulled her out of the wedding like she was some fragile doll needing rescue. Every mutual friend tiptoed around him now. Invitations to group events quietly disappeared. No texts asking how he was. Silence wrapped around him like a coffin lid. As Clayton walked back to his car, the empty parking lot stretched endlessly around him, cold and gray under the evening sky. He gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles whitened. Something was wrong. This was not just a dying ex-boyfriend needing sympathy. This was something bigger. And Clayton was done being the fool. Days passed. Then a week. Then 2. Rowan did not call. Did not text. Did not answer the door when he went to her apartment. It was as if she had vanished. Or worse, as if he had never mattered at all. Clayton sat in his darkened living room, the glow from the muted television painting shadows across the walls. A bottle of whiskey, barely touched at their engagement party, now stood half empty on the table. He replayed the last night they spent together in his mind over and over. Her nervous laughter, the quick way she snatched her phone, the fake smile she gave when he asked if everything was okay. The signs had been there. He had just refused to see them. The real pain was not just losing her. It was realizing she had already chosen to leave him before he even knew they were saying goodbye. His phone buzzed again, a sympathetic message from his best friend. You will find someone better, bro. Hang in there. Better? He did not want someone better. He wanted the truth. And Clayton would get it. Even if it meant digging through every ugly, rotten lie Rowan Hart had tried to bury. Because some betrayals deserved more than heartbreak. They deserved answers. They deserved justice. The nights dragged on like a bad fever. Clayton had stopped answering calls from anyone outside of work. He moved like a ghost through his own life, surviving on black coffee, stubborn anger, and the bone-deep need for answers. It was a rainy Friday when it happened. A knock at his apartment door, sharp, urgent. Clayton opened it to find Shane, an old mutual friend from college. Shane looked uncomfortable, shifting from foot to foot, glancing down the hall. "Can I come in?" he asked in a low voice. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of rain and old takeout. Shane sat on the edge of the couch like he might bolt at any second. "I am not supposed to say anything," Shane began. "But you deserve to know." Clayton's pulse quickened. "Rowan, she is not taking care of a dying ex," Shane said, voice cracking slightly. "I saw them last night. At Monroe's. Laughing. Drinking." Clayton blinked. "You are sure?" "I am sure. Travis looked healthy enough to start a damn marathon." Shane rubbed his face. "I do not know what she told you, but it is not what you think." The room tilted slightly. Clayton's hands curled into fists on his knees. It was not just about love anymore. It was about lies. "Thanks for telling me," Clayton said finally, his voice cold and steady. Shane hesitated. "Clay, whatever you are thinking, be careful." Clayton said nothing. He just watched as Shane disappeared back into the rain, leaving a trail of muddy footprints on the floor. Careful? It was already too late for that. Clayton sat at his desk under the harsh glow of his apartment's single overhead light, fingers flying over his laptop keyboard. He started with Travis Cole. Facebook, LinkedIn, old news articles. Within 2 hours, the truth started bleeding out of the screen. Travis was no dying man. He had been setting up a new consulting firm 3 months ago, suspiciously around the time Rowan began withdrawing larger amounts from their joint savings account for wedding expenses. Digging deeper, Clayton found documents that showed Travis's firm had been listed under a parent company, a company partially owned by Rowan's maiden name. Piercing pain lanced through his chest. She had not only lied about her ex's health, she had been funneling money into a business connected to him. It had been a setup, a long con disguised as love. Clayton stared at the monitor, feeling the betrayal settle into his bones. Every memory, every smile, every whispered promise felt like acid burning through his veins. Rowan had played him for a fool, but if she thought he would roll over and disappear, she was wrong. He printed everything he found. Hard copies, backups, evidence. If they wanted to play dirty, he could go lower. When he finally shut down the laptop, the clock read 3:47 a.m. His eyes were dry, his mind sharp. The woman he loved was gone. What remained now was an enemy, and he would treat her like one. Saturday afternoon, Clayton stood outside a pale gray building downtown, rain slicking the pavement at his feet. The sign above read, Central Medical Records Office. Inside, he spoke to a woman behind a thick glass partition. Her name tag read Melissa. She looked bored, like she had seen too much life to be impressed by anything anymore. "I am here to check on a patient record," Clayton said, sliding a forged authorization form across the counter. Monica, his private investigator contact, had prepped everything legally airtight. Melissa sighed, typed into her computer, and glanced back up. "There is no Travis Cole registered as a patient in our system," she said. "Not now? Not ever." Clayton's heart slammed against his ribs. "You are sure?" he asked, keeping his voice neutral. She turned the monitor so he could see for himself. "No record found. He might have gone somewhere else," Melissa shrugged. "But he has never been here." Clayton nodded stiffly and left, stepping back into the wet afternoon. He leaned against the cold brick wall outside, letting the rain soak through his jacket. There it was. Undeniable. Proof that the entire terminal illness story was a lie. Clayton looked down at the folder in his hand, a folder now heavy with evidence. He tightened his grip. If Rowan and Travis wanted war, they had just declared it. And Clayton Pierce was no longer playing defense. The rain had not let up by the time Clayton pulled into the cracked parking lot of Monroe's, the grimy bar where Shane had seen Rowan and Travis laughing like teenagers. Monroe's smelled like spilled beer and regret. Neon lights flickered weakly above sticky floors. Clayton moved through the crowd with calculated slowness, eyes scanning. At the back, near the jukebox, he saw them. Rowan's laugh, the same laugh that once melted every wall inside him, rang out, sharp and free. Travis leaned close, his hand brushing her thigh under the table. There was no sign of sickness, no hint of impending death. They clinked glasses and whispered into each other's ears like high school sweethearts. Clayton's stomach turned. He ducked behind a pillar, pulling out his phone. One snap, then another. Evidence. Not because he needed it for himself anymore. He needed it for what was coming next. Rowan stood up, stumbling slightly, and Travis caught her with a hand at her waist. They looked comfortable, familiar. There was no emergency. There was no tragic farewell. There was only betrayal, playing out so brazenly it made Clayton's blood roar in his ears. He slipped back out into the night, rain hammering against his jacket. Each step to his car felt heavier, more deliberate. He was done waiting for answers. Now, it was time to start asking the right questions, the ones that would leave no stone unturned and no secret safe. Clayton's fingers tapped impatiently against the formica table of the cheap diner, the bitter coffee cooling untouched before him. Across from him sat Monica Vale, her short dark hair damp from the rain, her jacket dripping onto the cracked vinyl booth. She pulled out a thick envelope and slid it across the table. "Everything you asked for," she said quietly. "And more." Clayton opened it. Inside were surveillance photos, financial records, and a typed dossier. Rowan and Travis were not just lovers. They were partners in a scam stretching back months. The consulting firm was a shell company, a vehicle for laundering money from fake charities, investment frauds, and sketchy real estate deals. Worse, Rowan's father, Harold Hart, was involved. Clayton exhaled slowly, the weight of it all settling onto his shoulders. "This is bigger than just two liars in love," he said. Monica nodded grimly. "This is federal prison kind of big. If you want revenge, I can help you hit them where it hurts most. Their wallets, their freedom, their reputations." Clayton clenched his jaw, staring at the black and white photos of the woman he had once dreamed of marrying. "I do not want revenge," he said, voice low and tight. "I want justice. Cold. Final. Public." Monica smiled for the first time that night, a small, sharp curve of her lips. "Good," she said, "because I have a plan." The next week unfolded in a blur of late nights and secret meetings. Clayton and Monica built their case methodically. Every financial transaction, every falsified document, every phony contract signed by Rowan or Harold. The deeper they dug, the uglier it became. Clayton learned that the charity Rowan's family boasted about, Heart Hope Foundation, was nothing but a front. Only a fraction of donations went to actual causes. The rest funneled quietly into offshore accounts. They had used his name too. Some of Clayton's early wedding investments had been discreetly borrowed to float one of their fake real estate ventures. His dreams of a future with Rowan had been bankrolled into criminal enterprise. It was not just betrayal anymore. It was weaponized trust. Late one night, hunched over a spread of documents in Monica's cramped office, Clayton slammed his fist onto the table. "They used me," he growled. "They used everyone." Monica leaned back, lighting a cigarette, her eyes hard and unflinching. "Then it is time to use them right back," she said. Outside, thunder rumbled low across the city skyline. Inside, Clayton's resolve hardened like steel. No more doubts. No more heartbreak. This was war now. And he was going to burn everything they had built, brick by corrupt brick. Clayton parked a block away from the Heart Hope Foundation's corporate office, his jacket collar pulled high against the biting wind. The building itself was a facade, gleaming glass, pristine banners boasting slogans like, "Building a better tomorrow." But inside it hid rot. Monica had secured access to the building's internal systems through a former employee, a timid accountant named Jeremy, who had been fired without severance when he asked too many questions. Clayton slipped inside during a public charity event, blending in with the well-dressed crowd. Every smile he saw felt false. Every handshake reeked of hidden agendas. He spotted Harold Hart at the podium, giving a speech about hope, integrity, and compassion. The same man who siphoned donations into private jets and offshore accounts. Clayton kept his head down and moved toward the administrative wing. Monica, stationed outside in a surveillance van, fed him instructions through an earpiece. "Second door on the right. File room. 5 minutes before the next security sweep," she said. He moved quickly, heart hammering against his ribs. Every second felt longer than the last. Inside the file room, rows of locked cabinets lined the walls. Clayton found the one Monica had targeted and used the stolen key Jeremy had provided. Inside were paper trails, real, physical documents, ledgers, false invoices, donation diversions, signatures tying Harold and Rowan directly to fraudulent transactions. Clayton snapped photographs feverishly. Proof. Unbreakable, undeniable proof. Footsteps echoed down the hall. Clayton froze, every muscle tense. A pair of security guards passed the door without pause. When he slipped back into the crowd, evidence secured under his jacket, Clayton caught Harold's eye briefly across the ballroom. The older man gave him a politician's smile, warm, fake, practiced. Clayton smiled back. Harold had no idea that his perfect little empire was already crumbling from the inside. The following evening, Monica laid out the blueprint of their next move on the scarred table in her office. "You have the documents," she said, tapping them with a neatly manicured finger. "Now you need to move the money." Clayton frowned. "Move it." "Not literally," Monica said. "Symbolically. We are going to create a situation where their fraudulent transactions get noticed by the right people. The kind who do not give warnings before they pounce." She explained. They would anonymously tip off a financial auditing firm already contracted by another nonprofit organization linked to Hart Hope. The firm would audit Hart Hope's books under normal compliance procedures. Only now, they would find a treasure map of fraud ready to blow open. "We will light the match," Monica said. "Then sit back and watch the fire spread." Clayton stared at the files spread before him. It was more than revenge now. It was justice with precision. They spent hours crafting the tip-off email, careful not to leave fingerprints. They made it look like it came from an anonymous insider, which, in a way, was true. Every word was chosen carefully. Every document attached strategically. Monica encrypted everything 3 times over. When Clayton finally hit send, his hand hovered over the mouse for half a second. Was there a part of him that still loved Rowan? Still wished for some alternate reality where none of this had happened? The moment passed. He clicked. The message flew into cyberspace, a silent assassin aimed at the heart of the Hart family's deception. "You did good," Monica said quietly, lighting a cigarette by the open window. Clayton said nothing. He just watched the smoke curl into the night sky, dark, rising, unstoppable. The days that followed were a masterclass in patience. Clayton returned to work, played his part, smiled when he needed to, all while waiting for the inevitable cracks to form. The first ripples arrived midweek. Gossip among Rowan's social circle. Whispers about an audit. Board meetings called at odd hours. Nervous faces outside the Hart Hope building. Clayton observed from a distance, never interfering, never revealing himself. He watched Rowan step out of her silver Audi one afternoon, her usual confidence fraying at the edges. She wore oversized sunglasses, but her body language betrayed her. Hunched shoulders, brisk, erratic movements. She knew something was wrong. She just did not know how wrong yet. Later that night, Monica sent him an encrypted message. Phase 1 success. Audit triggered. Authorities now monitoring transactions. Clayton sat back in his chair, the weight of victory beginning to settle into his bones. But victory was not the goal. Not yet. He wanted it all exposed. Every lie, every theft, every dirty handshake behind closed doors. He wanted the world to see Rowan Hart and Harold Hart not as victims or philanthropists, but as what they truly were: predators, parasites, liars. And he would not stop until every mask they wore was ripped away under the merciless light of public disgrace. The sharks smelled blood. Clayton watched from the corner booth of a coffee shop across the street as Heart Hope Foundation's board members streamed into an emergency meeting. Most wore grim expressions. Some shouted into phones. A few clutched thick folders, likely desperate defenses prepared too late. Inside the building, Rowan and Harold were fighting battles on too many fronts. Financial audits, media inquiries, private donors demanding answers. Rowan's polished public image, once a gleaming shield, was cracking visibly now. Her perfect smile had faded into tight, angry lines. Clayton sipped his coffee, the bitterness grounding him. This was not gloating. This was justice unfolding step by slow, devastating step. His phone buzzed. Monica's message blinked on the screen. Whistleblower approached federal investigators. You were right about the offshore accounts. Clayton stared across the street, heart hammering quietly. It was working. The empire Harold Hart built on lies and theft was bleeding out in the open. And soon, Rowan would bleed with it. Reputation shredded, finances destroyed, future gone. No violence. No screaming matches. Just cold, public exposure, the kind that could never be scrubbed clean. Clayton finished his coffee, left cash on the table, and stepped out into the cold afternoon. For the first time in months, the air tasted sweet. Late that evening, Monica and Clayton sat in her dimly lit office, documents spread across the battered oak table. Your instincts were dead on, Monica said, flipping a file toward him. Harold was not just stealing. He was covering up decades of fraud. Rowan learned from the best. Clayton scanned the papers. Old lawsuits settled quietly, charities dissolved without warning, real estate developments that never broke ground. Patterns of betrayal wrapped in polished smiles and ribbon-cutting ceremonies. They are a family of professional liars, Clayton muttered, the weight of it pressing against his chest. Born into it, Monica agreed. Raised on it. To them, stealing is not wrong. It is tradition. Clayton leaned back in his chair, the anger simmering low and steady inside him. How much longer before the full investigation hits? He asked. Monica smiled grimly. Days. Maybe hours. The auditors flagged over $2 million in misallocated funds already. When the feds dig deeper, it is over. He nodded, feeling both satisfaction and a cold, hollow ache. He had loved Rowan once, believed in her, dreamed of a life with her. Now, all he could see was the twisted bloodline she came from, parasites who built their fortunes on the broken trust of others. And soon, the whole world would see it too. He would make sure of it. The final moves were almost in place. Clayton sat alone on a park bench overlooking the city, the lights sparkling against the deep indigo sky. He could feel the storm building. Not the weather, but the storm of consequences Rowan and her family had unleashed upon themselves. His phone buzzed. Another anonymous tip sent to the local news outlets. Another batch of documents leaked quietly to federal investigators. Another nail in the coffin. He watched the city breathe beneath him, a living, pulsing thing, utterly unaware of the war raging behind closed doors. Tomorrow, it would all change. Tomorrow, the world would watch as the hearts fell from grace. Clayton thought of Rowan's face, of her laughter that once felt like home, of the life they had almost built together. He thought about the night she had stared into his eyes and promised forever, even as she siphoned away his trust, his future, his love. His fists tightened on the bench's worn wood. He would not waste another second mourning a ghost. Tomorrow was not about revenge anymore. It was about truth, about exposing every dirty secret, About justice for every person the Hearts had stepped on and forgotten. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves around him. Somewhere far off, thunder growled. Clayton rose, pulling his jacket tighter around him. The night before the reckoning had arrived, and he was ready. The first domino fell at exactly 9:03 a.m. News alerts exploded across local media. Hart Hope Foundation under federal investigation for fraud and embezzlement. Photos of Harold Hart and Rowan Hart flashed across every screen, smiling at charity galas, cutting ribbons, shaking hands with politicians. Clayton watched it all unfold from the shadows, feeling no triumph. Only cold, hard justice. But the real shock came hours later. Monica's voice crackled through the burner phone. "Clayton, you need to see this." He rushed to her office, heart pounding with a strange, unsettled dread. Monica tossed a manila envelope onto the table. "Found this digging through the newer shell companies. Travis was never the real partner." Clayton frowned. "What do you mean?" Monica flipped open the folder, revealing surveillance photos taken just days ago. Rowan, in the arms of another man. A man Clayton had never seen before, older, sharper, professional looking. Monica slid a document across the table next. Corporate filings, bank transfers, fake investment contracts. The man in the photos was Derek Lawton, the family's corporate attorney. Clayton's breath caught. "Rowan has been sleeping with their damn lawyer," Monica said, voice like ice. "Travis was just a distraction. The real game was with Derek. They built the fraud empire together. Every piece snapped together like shards of broken glass. Rowan had not just betrayed Clayton with a dying ex. She had staged the entire tragedy, using Travis as her puppet, pulling sympathy while hiding the real affair, the real corruption, with Derek." Clayton sat back, feeling the floor tilt under him. All this time, he had been hunting a lie built on top of another lie. And Rowan Hart was the queen of them all. Shock burned through Clayton's veins, but he forced himself to breathe, to focus. This changed everything, and nothing. The goal remained the same: destroy their empire. But now, he understood the monster he was truly facing. Rowan was not just corrupted by her father's world. She was thriving in it. Smart, cold, strategic, and she had underestimated him. Later that evening, Clayton drove by Derek Lawton's downtown office. Lights burned in the top floors. Panic meetings, probably. Damage control. He parked across the street, staring up at the windows. Somewhere in that building, Rowan and Derek were scrambling to hold their lives together with duct tape and desperation. They had thought themselves invincible. They had played with people's trust like it was pocket change. They had ripped lives apart for power and luxury. And tomorrow, he would tear down the last piece of their golden facade. He sent Monica a final text, ready to move. Full exposure. Her reply came seconds later. Confirmed. Everything is set. Prepare for fallout. Clayton leaned back in the driver's seat, watching the city breathe around him. The stage was built. The audience was gathering. And the final performance was about to begin. No more hesitation. No more mercy. Rowan had crowned herself queen of corruption. Clayton was going to drag her off the throne, piece by bloody piece. The next morning, as the sun struggled to break through thick, bruised clouds, Clayton met an unlikely ally. Travis Cole. They met in a grimy motel room on the edge of town, the air thick with stale cigarettes and regret. Travis looked rough, eyes bloodshot, hands trembling. He wore a cheap hoodie, blending into the background like a man already halfway gone. "You said you had a deal," Travis muttered, voice cracked and bitter. Clayton tossed a thick envelope onto the bed. Inside, evidence that could destroy Derek Lawton's career, Rowan's reputation, and Harold Hart's freedom. "You want revenge for her using you," Clayton said, voice low. "Help me. Help yourself." Travis snorted bitterly. "You think I give a damn about justice? I just want to watch her burn." "Then we are on the same side," Clayton said. They outlined the plan. Travis would leak insider documents, messages, transfers, personal notes. directly to media outlets under the guise of a concerned ex-employee. Clayton and Monica would handle the legal channels, ensuring federal investigators received perfectly timed evidence bundles. Two fronts, one mission, total annihilation. Travis stuffed the envelope into his jacket, eyes flashing with something feral. "When this is over," he said, "I want to be there. I want to see her fall." Clayton nodded once. "You will," he promised. And when Rowan's perfect world crumbled into ash, she would see exactly who lit the match. Clayton stood over Monica's desk, staring at the digital folders they had spent weeks compiling. Each file was a dagger: bank records, wire transfers, emails, offshore account details. Each carefully labeled, time-stamped, undeniable. "This is the kill shot," Monica said, her voice flat with certainty. "You are about to expose them in every direction at once." They had timed it perfectly. The media leaks would hit first, painting headlines in bold, damning colors. Then the evidence would pour into federal and state investigators' offices like a flood. No spin, no time to react, no escape. Clayton breathed out slowly. "No turning back after this." "You sure you want that?" Monica asked quietly. He pictured Rowan's laughing face at Monroe's, Travis's hand on her leg, Harold's lying speeches about charity and hope, Derek's name on secret contracts. He nodded once, hard. "I am sure." Together, they pressed send. Across the city, servers lit up. Inboxes pinged. Screens flooded with the ugly truth the Hearts had fought to bury. The empire they had built on deceit and betrayal had just been set ablaze. And this time, there would be no rebuilding. The first explosion hit within the hour. Local news broke the story in a frenzy. Heart Hope Foundation CEO accused of multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. Exclusive, secret offshore accounts tied to Rowan Hart revealed. Clayton watched it unfold from the edge of the chaos, safely hidden. Within minutes, social media caught fire. Influencers, activists, angry citizens, everyone had an opinion, and none of it was kind. Harold's smiling portraits were splashed alongside phrases like thief and fraudster. Rowan's perfect Instagram profile, once filled with staged charity photos and designer outfits, became a battlefield of accusations and betrayal memes. By noon, Heart Hope's board resigned en masse. By sunset, Rowan's face was pulled from the charity's official website. Clayton sat on a park bench, watching the skyline darken into bruised purples and golds. Monica's text came through. "FBI just opened a formal investigation. They are coming." He closed his eyes, feeling the electric hum of inevitability in the air. The wolves were at the door now. And this time, nobody could save the Hearts. Not money, not connections, not lies. The next day, Clayton met Travis one last time. They stood on a rooftop overlooking the courthouse, the early morning fog clinging to the city below them. Travis looked even worse now, as if the weight of what he had helped create was finally crushing him. "Everything ready?" Travis asked, voice low. Clayton nodded. "You know what to do." Travis pulled a flash drive from his pocket. The last of the emails. Direct links between Derek and Rowan. They cannot deny it now. He handed it over without ceremony, without lingering. Clayton took it, feeling the final puzzle piece settle into place. "You could disappear after this," Clayton said. "Start over." Travis gave a hollow laugh. "There is no starting over for people like me." They stood in silence for a moment longer, two broken men tied together by the same betrayer. Then Travis turned and disappeared into the mist, a ghost walking away from the grave he had helped dig. Clayton stayed a moment longer, staring down at the courthouse steps where, soon, the Hearts would be dragged into the light. The noose was tightening, and justice was about to take center stage. The courthouse buzzed with media vans, protesters, and furious former donors. Inside, Rowan Hart sat stiffly at the defense table, flanked by high-powered attorneys who looked more desperate than confident. Her face was pale, her makeup struggling to cover the cracks. Harold sat beside her, shoulders hunched, sweat beading his forehead. Derek Lawton, once the mastermind, stared stone-faced at the evidence screens lighting up one after another. Clayton sat quietly in the public gallery, unnoticed, invisible, watching the fall he had orchestrated. One by one, the prosecution laid out the crimes: fake charities, money laundering, embezzlement, wire fraud, documents, emails, bank records, testimony. Each revelation punched through the courtroom like a bullet. Rowan's face grew tighter with every piece of evidence. Her fingers twisted in her lap, her lips pressed into a bloodless line. She never looked toward the gallery. She would not have seen Clayton even if she had, because she was too busy watching her life burn down, one slow, excruciating piece at a time. When the prosecution played the secret recording, Derek and Rowan laughing about milking the donors dry, an audible gasp echoed through the room. Clayton watched without blinking. No rage, no regret, only the cold satisfaction of seeing the true face behind the perfect mask and knowing the whole world saw it too. The verdict came faster than anyone expected. In just 2 days, a preliminary judgment froze every Hart bank account, seized properties, and issued immediate warrants for Harold and Derek. Rowan was slapped with multiple federal charges, each carrying years behind bars. The courtroom buzzed with reporters, cameras flashing like lightning storms. Clayton stood outside, leaning against a marble column as agents led Harold away in handcuffs. The old man's face was pale and slack, a ruined king stripped of his crown. Rowan followed moments later, wrists shackled, head bowed but defiant. She refused to cry, refused to give the cameras that satisfaction. Clayton's gaze locked onto her. For a brief moment, Rowan's eyes lifted and met his. Recognition flared. Shock. Then something colder. Hatred. She knew. She knew it had been him behind the fall, the exposure, the annihilation. And she could do nothing about it. The federal agents pulled her along, shoving her into the black SUV that would take her to booking. Clayton watched her disappear into the gathering storm clouds, the last thread of his old life snapping in the wind. The empire was dead, and its architects had been buried under the weight of their own greed. By nightfall, Rowan's mugshot plastered every screen. News anchors dissected her downfall with gleeful precision. Former friends distanced themselves with panicked statements. Corporate sponsors yanked funding. Her designer endorsements evaporated overnight. Comment sections were brutal, a digital lynch mob dragging her reputation across the broken glass of public opinion. Clayton scrolled through it all with a hollow detachment. He was not proud. He was not guilty. He was simply done. He switched off his phone and stepped out onto his balcony, the city buzzing below him. It was a strange feeling, victory without celebration. He thought back to the nights he had spent awake, wondering what he had done wrong, wondering why he was not enough, wondering how love had turned into betrayal so fast, so cruelly. The truth was simple now. It had never been about him. It had always been about power, about greed, about using anyone, everyone, to climb higher. And in chasing their dreams of invincibility, Rowan and her family had flown too close to the sun. Now they were falling. And no one, no money, no lawyers, no lies, could catch them. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal headlines and ruined lives. Hart Hope dissolved in disgrace. Harold's offshore accounts were seized. Derek's law license was revoked. Travis disappeared, swallowed by the very darkness he had helped create. Clayton stayed silent. He did not give interviews. He did not gloat online. He simply watched from a distance as the people who had once walked over him now clawed desperately at the wreckage, trying to salvage what little remained. He got a call from Monica one afternoon, her voice lighter than he had ever heard it. "It is over," she said simply. Clayton stood at the edge of a pier, the sun setting in a molten blaze across the water. He said nothing, only listened to the seagulls crying against the wind. "Take some time for yourself," Monica said after a pause. "You earned it." Clayton nodded silently, even though she could not see him. He ended the call and slipped the phone into his pocket. The world felt different now. Quieter, sharper, And for the first time in what felt like years, he was not drowning anymore. He was standing on solid ground, alone, scarred, but stronger. Clayton thought he had heard the last of Travis Cole. But darkness has a way of leaving echoes. It came in the form of a late-night knock on his apartment door. Hard, fast, desperate. He opened it to find a federal agent, badge flashing under the hallway light. Clayton Pierce. Yes, Clayton said, heart tightening. We need to ask you a few questions. About Travis Cole. Clayton stepped back, letting them in, mind racing. In short, clipped sentences, the agent explained. Travis had attempted to flee the country with stolen money siphoned from Hart Hope's last hidden reserves. Worse, he had tried to frame Clayton in the process, altering documents to make it look like Clayton had been involved. Clayton felt the betrayal settle over him like a fresh weight. Even after everything, even after joining forces, Travis had stayed true to his nature. A rat, a survivor, a liar. Monica stepped in quickly, providing airtight alibis and proof that kept Clayton's name clean. The agents left satisfied, but the bitter taste remained. Clayton stood by the window long after they had gone, watching the city lights shimmer in the distance. Betrayal upon betrayal. Lies stacked upon lies. But not even Travis's cowardice could undo what had already been done. The Harts had fallen, and Clayton Pierce was still standing. The courtroom buzzed with quiet tension as Clayton stepped inside, his boots echoing against the polished floors. Rows of spectators lined the benches, reporters scribbling notes, family members clutching tissues, former donors glaring with betrayed fury. At the defense table, Rowan sat flanked by two grim-faced attorneys. Her once radiant hair hung limp around her shoulders, her complexion pale, hollowed by sleepless nights. She avoided looking at him. Clayton took his seat in the gallery, his hands loose at his sides, his heart strangely steady. The proceedings began quickly. The federal prosecutor laid out the charges like a surgeon exposing a gaping wound. Wire fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, conspiracy to defraud. Documents flashed across the screens. Emails, bank records, surveillance photos, secret recordings. Each new piece of evidence stripped another layer from Rowan's armor. Her hands twisted nervously in her lap, her breathing shallow and fast. Her father sat beside her, but even he seemed broken now, a once proud man crumbling under the weight of his own sins. When Derek Lawton was called to testify, cutting a plea deal to save his own skin, Rowan finally cracked. Tears slid down her cheeks as Derek coolly recounted how they had orchestrated fake charities, hidden millions, manipulated donors. Not a word of love, not a word of regret, only cold, brutal facts. The jury watched in stunned silence. The judge's gavel slammed down with finality. Rowan Hart and Harold Hart would stand trial for all counts. Bail was denied. The guards stepped forward to lead them away, not gently this time. As they passed, Rowan's gaze flickered, one last desperate glance toward Clayton. But he gave her nothing. No anger, no pity, no forgiveness, only silence. Because some betrayals deserved no words at all. Days later, Clayton found himself standing at the gates of what would have been their wedding venue. The old oak trees swayed in the cool autumn breeze, their golden leaves scattering across the empty courtyard. The air smelled of damp wood and faded dreams. Clayton pushed the gate open and walked slowly across the cracked flagstones, past the stone archway where vows would have been exchanged, past the empty gazebo where their first dance would have begun. In his hand, he held the wedding ring he had once picked out so carefully, a simple, elegant band symbolizing promises that had turned to ash. He stood under the archway for a long time, letting the memories wash over him. The laughter, the excitement, the lies. He closed his fist around the ring, feeling its cold weight pressing into his palm. With a steady breath, Clayton pulled back his arm and hurled the ring into the overgrown fountain at the center of the courtyard. It struck stone with a hollow clink, bounced once, and disappeared into the stagnant water. Gone. A fitting burial for a love that had never truly existed. He turned without looking back. As he walked away from the ruins of a life that could have been, the sun broke through the clouds, casting long golden rays across the path ahead. Clayton did not smile. He did not weep. He simply moved forward, step by step, leaving the ghosts behind. Weeks turned into months. The headlines faded. The courtroom buzz silenced. The world, as it always does, moved on. But Clayton Pierce did not forget. He carried the scars, invisible but sharp, reminders stitched deep into his soul. Lessons paid for in betrayal, in grief, in fire. He built a new life slowly, brick by brick, without shortcuts, without illusions. He did not rush into new relationships. He did not throw himself into reckless adventures or hollow victories. Instead, he traveled. Small towns, coastal roads, mountain trails. He listened to strangers' stories in diners. He watched sunsets alone on beaches no one photographed. He learned how to be whole again, not through grand gestures, but through quiet resilience. One evening, standing atop a cliffside path as the Pacific wind tore through his jacket, Clayton understood something simple and powerful. Healing was not about forgetting. It was about choosing not to live inside the wound anymore. The past would always be a part of him, but it would never define him. He turned his face toward the wind, letting it steal the last pieces of the man he used to be. And for the first time in a long time, he smiled. A real smile. One built on truth, on survival, on freedom. The future stretched wide before him, unwritten, uncertain, but gloriously his own. He was not afraid anymore. The last chapter. Karma has no expiry date. The letter arrived on a gray morning. No return address. No sender's name. But Clayton knew the handwriting instantly. Rowan Hart. Inside, the letter was long. Apologies. Excuses. Pleas for understanding. Whispers of loneliness behind prison bars. Regrets painted in dripping, desperate ink. At the bottom, one final request. If you can find it in your heart, please write back. I have no one left. Clayton stared at the letter for a long time, feeling nothing. Not hatred, not pity, not love, just a quiet certainty. He crumpled the letter slowly, methodically, and tossed it into the fireplace. The flames curled around the paper greedily, erasing every lie, every manipulation, every ghost. As the last ashes drifted upward, Clayton whispered into the empty room. You chose your path, Rowan. Now I choose mine. He walked away without looking back, free, whole, unburdened. Because sometimes, the most powerful revenge is not destruction. It is survival. It is building a life so full, so real, so unbreakable, that the people who betrayed you can never touch it again. Before you go, I want to leave you with one simple but powerful lesson from this story. Trust is not a gift. It is a responsibility. Lose it once, and no apology, no regret, no begging can ever fully restore it. Protect the people who value you. Walk away from the ones who only value what you can give them. Remember that. Always. Now a question for you. Have you ever trusted someone who turned out to be completely different than who you thought they were? Share your story in the comments. I would love to hear where you are watching from too. If you felt the emotions in this story, if you love the twists and the ultimate victory, please gently tap the like button, subscribe for more intense thriller and revenge stories, and leave a comment. Your support helps us keep telling powerful stories like this one. We will meet again soon in another epic revenge and thriller journey. Until then, take care of your heart and stay strong.